Helpless. That was the only word I could use to describe what I felt as I sat in the living room of the Blackwood mansion. The home of my greatest rival. As the heir to the Sterling family, I should never have crossed this doorstep. Generations of rivalry had taught us that a Sterling and a Blackwood could never stand on the same side. Yet here I was. Not because I had lost a company. Not because Viviana Blackwood had finally defeated me in business. She never had. She never could. The reason I was sitting here was far more painful than any financial loss. My Omega. My fated mate. The person carrying our unborn twins. Julian refused to even look at me. His silence shattered me more completely than any defeat ever could. It was ironic. I had spent years fighting billion-dollar battles without ever feeling fear. But the thought of losing one gentle Omega brought me to my knees. Everything began exactly 1 year ago. Julian had just returned from studying overseas. That evening, he attended a charity gala alongside his older sister, Viviana Blackwood, while I represented the Sterling family. Everyone in the ballroom expected another cold exchange between the heirs of two rival empires. So did I. Until I saw him. Standing quietly beside Viviana, Julian looked completely out of place among the politicians, CEOs, and investors. He wore a simple ivory suit that somehow made him shine brighter than everyone else in the room. For the first time in my life, I forgot why I was there. I couldn't hear the conversations around me anymore. I couldn't focus on the business deals waiting for my signature. My eyes kept drifting back to him. Again. And again. And again. Then, as though he could actually feel my gaze, Julian looked up. Our eyes met across the crowded ballroom. Neither of us looked away immediately. There was something in those silver eyes, something warm, curious, almost familiar. Something that made my alpha stir restlessly beneath my skin. For the rest of the evening, I found myself searching for him without even realizing it. Every time I looked in his direction, he was already looking at me. Whenever our eyes met, he would blush ever so slightly before pretending to be interested in something else. It was strangely adorable. Later that night, fate offered me an excuse I wasn't willing to waste. I found Julian standing alone outside the washroom, taking a quiet break from the overwhelming crowd. Escaping the party? I asked. He jumped a little before smiling nervously. I could ask you the same thing. His voice was softer than I imagined. Gentle. Comforting. Dangerously addictive. We talked for only a few minutes, but it felt as though we had known each other for years. When he mentioned he was about to leave, I stopped him. Can I have your number? His eyes widened. You know my sister would kill me if she found out. I laughed quietly. Then let's make sure she never does. Julian looked at me for several long seconds before slowly taking my phone. His fingers brushed against mine as he typed in his number. Don't tell Viviana, I whispered. He smiled, a smile that would later become my favorite sight in the world. I won't. That one promise changed everything. The messages started that very night. A simple goodnight turned into a conversation that lasted until sunrise. Soon, every morning began with a text from Julian. Every night ended with his voice keeping me company over the phone. Whenever our schedules allowed, we met in secret. Coffee shops. Parks. Late-night drives. Hidden restaurants where no one from either family would recognize us. Somewhere between stolen conversations and secret smiles, I fell in love. Completely. Hopelessly. Julian was unlike anyone I had ever met. He wasn't interested in power. He didn't care about family rivalries. He saw the world with a kindness that made me question the man I had become. But love doesn't erase mistakes. And I made one I will regret for the rest of my life. Being the heir to the Sterling family meant I was always thinking about business. There were moments when I casually asked Julian about Blackwood Group projects, upcoming investments, or deals Viviana was working on. To him, they were just harmless conversations. To me, they were valuable information. Julian trusted me without hesitation. He answered every question with complete honesty because he believed I would never use his words against him. And I did. Not enough to destroy the Blackwood family. I could never bring myself to hurt Julian like that. But enough to stay one step ahead of Viviana. Enough to win contracts that should have belonged to Blackwood Group. I told myself it was only business. That everyone used every advantage they could. That it changed nothing between Julian and me. I was wrong. Because despite everything, despite every selfish decision I made, my love for Julian was never a lie. Not once. Not even for a second. The moment he smiled, the rest of the world faded away. The moment he laughed, I wanted to spend the rest of my life protecting that happiness. And every time his sweet Omega scent wrapped around me, my alpha had to fight with every ounce of control not to pull him into my arms and never let go. I didn't love Julian because he was a Blackwood. I loved him because he was Julian. The gentle Omega who unknowingly became the most important person in my life. Unfortunately, by the time I understood that love should have come before business, I had already broken the heart of the only person I couldn't bear to lose. This version of the story has been edited to comply with YouTube community guidelines. The full uncut and uncensored version is available on my Patreon, where you'll also find part 2 of the story already uploaded. To visit my Patreon, simply scan the QR code on your screen or use the link in my profile. It all started 4 months ago. Back then, everything between Julian and me was perfect. We had been secretly dating for 8 months, stealing every moment we could from the endless rivalry between our families. To the rest of the world, we were heirs to 2 competing business empires. But whenever we were together, none of that mattered. Wanting to spend some time alone with him, I took Julian to my private lake house, a secluded place far away from the city where no one knew us. Even getting him there was a risk. Only one person knew about our relationship, my head bodyguard. He had figured it out months earlier after seeing the way I looked at Julian. Instead of questioning me, he quietly helped us, arranging everything so no one from either family would find out where we had gone. For 2 wonderful days, the world belonged only to us. There were no board meetings, no shareholders, no reporters, no Sterling family, no Blackwood family, just Julian and me. We woke up beside each other every morning, cooked breakfast together, laughed over our terrible attempts at making pancakes, and spent hours walking along the peaceful lakeshore with our fingers intertwined. We watched the sunset from the wooden dock, talking about everything and nothing at the same time. For the first time in years, I wasn't thinking like the heir to the Sterling Group. I was simply a man hopelessly in love with his Omega. At night, I refused to let Julian leave my arms. Every time he tried to get out of bed for a glass of water or simply to tease me, I would pull him back against my chest. "You've become so clingy," he laughed one night. "I'm your alpha," I replied, kissing the top of his head. "I'm allowed to be." He rolled his eyes playfully. "No, you're just obsessed." "Maybe I am." I tightened my embrace, breathing in his sweet Omega scent. "Then don't let me go." Julian smiled before wrapping his arms around me. I wasn't planning to. Those 2 days became the happiest memories of my life. If only I had left my business ambitions behind as well. 3 weeks later, one of the biggest business opportunities in the country's history was going to be decided. A multi-billion-dollar international project. Winning it wouldn't just bring unimaginable profits, it would dramatically increase the company's value and establish its winner as the unquestioned leader of the industry. Every major corporation wanted that contract. But everyone knew there was only one true favorite: Blackwood Group. Viviana had personally led the project for months, and according to every industry expert, no company had a proposal strong enough to compete with hers, including mine. At first, I never intended to ask Julian anything about it. I truly didn't. But one evening, while we sat together on the dock watching the sunset paint the lake in shades of gold, I casually began talking about my own presentation. I explained my ideas, the strategy my team had developed, the direction I wanted to take. Julian listened carefully before softly saying, "I don't think that's what they're looking for." I smiled. "Oh? Then what are they looking for?" He immediately shook his head. "I shouldn't say. Viviana told everyone to keep it confidential." I nodded, pretending not to care. I was just curious. The conversation moved on. The next day, I brought it up again. Not directly. Just little questions hidden inside normal conversations. Julian never thought I was trying to gather information. To him, I was simply sharing my work with the person I loved. Wanting to help me, he would occasionally compare my ideas with what Blackwood Group had prepared. "Maybe if you added something like this." "Oh? Viviana's team is focusing more on. I think your idea is good, but ours is." Every sentence sounded harmless. Every answer was given out of love. And by the time our weekend came to an end, Julian had unknowingly given me enough pieces to understand Blackwood Group's entire proposal. Back at Sterling Group, I couldn't stop thinking about what he had told me. I took the foundation of Blackwood's strategy and combined it with my own team's innovations. We improved it, expanded it, strengthened every weak point. By the time my presentation was finished, it had become even stronger than the proposal Blackwood Group had spent months creating. Presentation day arrived. The conference hall was filled with executives, investors, and representatives from every major corporation. Julian sat beside Viviana in the front row. As I began presenting, confidence filled every word I spoke. But halfway through, I noticed Julian. His smile slowly disappeared. Confusion spread across his face. Then disbelief. His eyes widened as he recognized idea after idea. Beside him, Viviana's expression darkened. She knew. Not every slide belonged to Blackwood Group. Not every detail. But the heart of the proposal. The strategy. The vision. It was theirs. The presentation ended to loud applause. Outside the conference room, representatives from both companies gathered in the hallway. Before I could say a word, Viviana marched straight toward me. "Where did you get those ideas?" I remained silent. Her voice became sharper. "Answer me, Sterling." When I still said nothing, she turned toward her own executives. "Who leaked our proposal?" No one answered. I asked who leaked it. The hallway fell silent. Then, "I'm sorry." A broken voice echoed behind us. "Julian." He stood there trembling violently, tears streaming uncontrollably down his face. He grabbed onto Viviana's arm with shaking hands. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." I told him. "I thought it was harmless. I'm so sorry." The realization hit everyone at once. Julian's breathing suddenly became uneven. His chest rose and fell rapidly. I can't breathe." Doctors assigned to the event rushed toward him immediately. "Everyone, give him space. He's having a severe anxiety attack." My heart stopped. "Julian." I pushed through the crowd. "Baby. Look at me. Please. Listen to my voice. Everything's going to be okay. You just need to breathe." I reached for him. But before my hand could touch him, Julian flinched away. He buried his face against Viviana's shoulder instead, clinging to his sister as if she were the only person he felt safe with. No matter how many times I called his name. No matter how desperately I begged him to look at me. He never did. That was the moment I realized. I hadn't just won a business contract. I had lost the person I loved more than anything else in this world. The moment the doctors realized Julian's condition wasn't improving, they stopped trying to calm him in the conference hall. "Prepare the ambulance. His panic attack is becoming severe." Medical staff quickly surrounded him. Julian was barely aware of what was happening around him. His entire body trembled uncontrollably as tears streamed endlessly down his face. "I'm sorry." His voice cracked. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to." He couldn't say anything else. Viviana immediately knelt beside him, taking both of his shaking hands into hers. "Julian." Her voice was calm despite the fear written all over her face. "Look at me. You have nothing to apologize for. I'm here. I promise, everything is going to be okay." She gently brushed the tears from his cheeks before helping the doctors place him onto the stretcher. Throughout the entire ordeal, neither of them looked at me. Not once. I stood there frozen, surrounded by dozens of people, yet I had never felt so alone. I wanted to run to him. I wanted to hold him. I wanted to tell him that none of this was his fault. But my feet refused to move. Because deep down, I knew the truth. I was the reason he was lying on that stretcher. The ambulance doors closed. The sirens echoed through the streets. And with them, it felt as though every piece of my heart disappeared. I don't remember how I reached the hospital. I only remember driving faster than I ever had before, praying over and over that Julian would be okay. "Please, just let him be okay. I'll fix everything. I'll give up the contract. I'll give up my company. I'll give up everything. Just don't take him away from me." By the time I arrived, the emergency department was already in chaos. Doctors and nurses rushed in and out of one treatment room after another. When I finally reached Julian's room, I stopped breathing. His anxiety attack had become so severe that even the medical staff struggled to calm him. His body shook so violently that several nurses were trying to keep him from hurting himself. His breathing was ragged. Every breath sounded painful. His eyes were swollen from crying. Yet the only words leaving his lips were the same ones he'd been repeating since the conference. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Again. And again. And again. Every apology broke something inside me. Viviana climbed onto the hospital bed without caring about the doctors around her. She gathered Julian into her arms as if he were still the little boy she had spent her entire life protecting. She held him tightly, one hand cradling the back of his head while the other rubbed slow circles across his back. "No," she whispered against his hair. "No, sweetheart. You don't have to apologize. I'm not angry with you. Do you hear me? I'm not mad. You didn't do this on purpose. You're safe. I'm here. I'll always be here. Everything is going to be okay." But Julian only shook his head harder. "I'm sorry." His voice had become nothing more than a broken whisper. "I'm so sorry." Watching him blame himself for my actions was unbearable. "Julian." Without thinking, I rushed toward the room. I only managed 2 steps before 2 Blackwood bodyguards blocked my path. "I need to see him." Neither of them moved. "Please. I just want to talk to him." "No." He doesn't want to see you. I have to explain. You've done enough. Their words struck harder than any punch ever could. I tried to move past them. They immediately stepped in front of me again. I couldn't even get close enough for Julian to hear my voice. Inside the room, Viviana slowly lifted her head. Our eyes met across the glass window. For years, she had been my greatest business rival. We had argued across boardrooms, competed for billion-dollar contracts, destroyed each other's negotiations without a second thought. But the woman looking at me now wasn't the CEO of Blackwood Group. She was an older sister. A sister watching her precious little brother fall apart because of the man he loved. There was no hatred in her eyes. Hatred could fade. What I saw was far worse. There was heartbreak, disgust, and a fury so cold it stole the air from my lungs. Her gaze told me everything without a single word. You didn't just betray my company. You broke my little brother. At that moment, I understood something with terrifying clarity. Viviana Blackwood would never come after me for stealing a business proposal. Money could be earned again. Contracts could be won again. Companies could recover. But Julian, the innocent Omega who had trusted me with his whole heart, the little brother she had promised to protect since the day he was born, that was something she would never forgive. And for the first time in my life, I realized there wasn't a punishment in this world cruel enough for what I had done. I never left the hospital. Even after the doctors assured everyone that Julian was no longer in immediate danger, I couldn't bring myself to walk away. I remained outside his room, standing in the same spot for hours, my eyes fixed on the small glass window in the door. Through it, I watched him. I watched the nurses quietly move around the room. I watched the doctors monitor his condition. Most of all, I watched Viviana. She never left his side. She sat beside his bed, gently holding his hand, whispering comforting words only he could hear. Every now and then, she would brush the damp strands of hair away from his forehead before squeezing his hand again, silently reminding him that he wasn't alone. And Julian, little by little, he began to calm down. His breathing slowly became steadier. The violent trembling that had consumed his body started to fade. But the emptiness in his eyes remained. Every time I looked at him, guilt tightened around my chest. I had done that. I was the reason the brightest person I had ever known looked so broken. Around noon, my phone began vibrating relentlessly. The board of directors, senior executives, investors. Everyone was calling with the same news. Congratulations, Mr. Sterling. We've secured the project. The contract officially belongs to Sterling Group. For months, that deal had been my biggest goal. A multi-billion-dollar project that every corporation in the country had fought to win. It was supposed to be the proudest moment of my career. Instead, I stared at the message on my screen with nothing but disgust. The contract suddenly felt worthless. What was the point of winning when the person I loved wouldn't even look at me? My hands began to shake. Then my shoulders. Soon my entire body was trembling just as violently as my heart. If someone had offered me a choice, the contract, or Julian, I would have burned every page of that agreement without a second thought. All I wanted was to hold him, to tell him how sorry I was, to tell him I loved him. But I couldn't even walk through the door. The Blackwood bodyguards made sure of that. As evening approached, the doctors decided to perform several additional examinations to make sure Julian's panic attack hadn't caused any physical complications. The room door closed. I could do nothing but wait. Every passing minute felt like an hour. Nearly 40 minutes later, the door finally opened. I immediately stood up. The doctor stepped into the hallway and quietly removed his gloves before looking toward Viviana. Ms. Blackwood, he said gently. May I have a word with you? Viviana nodded and walked over. The doctor lowered his voice, speaking softly enough that I couldn't hear every word. I watched Viviana's expression carefully. Her calm face slowly gave way to surprise. Then disbelief. She looked through the glass toward Julian before turning back to the doctor. Are you certain? The doctor smiled reassuringly. We repeated the tests to be sure. There is no mistake. Your brother is approximately 3 weeks pregnant. Time stopped. The hallway around me disappeared. Pregnant. Julian was carrying my child. Our child. For several long seconds, I couldn't breathe. Then reality crashed over me all at once. Julian. I rushed toward the room. Before I could reach the door, 2 Blackwood bodyguards stepped directly in front of me. Move. They didn't. My mate is in there. I tried to push past them. Our baby is inside him. Please. I need to see him. My voice cracked as tears filled my eyes. I looked desperately at Viviana. Please let me talk to him. I'll return the contract. I'll tell the entire board the truth. I'll do anything. Just let me see him. She didn't answer. She simply turned back toward Julian's room. The bodyguards remained exactly where they were. That silence broke something inside me. I leaned against the wall, covering my face with trembling hands as tears I had been holding back all day finally escaped. I should have been celebrating. Instead, the happiest news of my life became another reminder that I had already lost everything. That night, I never went home. I stayed outside Julian's room until sunrise, hoping that somehow he would ask to see me. He never did. By the following morning, both families had learned the truth. Julian Blackwood was expecting a child. And I was the father. Late that morning, my mother arrived at the hospital. The moment she saw me, she stopped walking. There was no anger on her face. Only disappointment. The kind that cut deeper than any punishment. She looked at me as though she no longer recognized the son she had raised. As though every value she and my father had tried to teach me had been forgotten. Without saying a word, she walked past me and entered Julian's room. I remained outside, watching through the glass. She stood beside Julian's bed and bowed her head. "I'm sorry, Julian." Her voice trembled. "There is no excuse for what my son has done." A tear rolled down her cheek. His father and I never raised him to betray someone who trusted him. We never raised him to become this kind of man. She took Julian's hand gently. "I know I have no right to ask this. But if one day your heart allows it, please forgive him." Julian looked at her quietly. After several long moments, he gave the faintest nod. Nothing more. Even after everything, he still chose kindness. A few days later, Julian was discharged. The moment he stepped out of the hospital, I hurried toward him. "Julian." He didn't stop. "Please. I'll give everything back. I'll fix this. I swear." He kept walking. Not once did he look at me. Not once. My mother stood beside me and quietly said, "You deserve every second of this." I couldn't argue. She was right. Just before Julian got into the waiting car, Viviana walked toward me. She stopped only inches away. For several silent seconds, she simply stared at me. Then she calmly reached forward and brushed a wrinkle from the front of my coat. The gesture was strangely gentle. Her words were not, "The only reason you're still standing here today," she lowered her hand, "is because my brother is carrying your child." Her eyes burned with a fury I had never witnessed before. "I refuse to let my future niece or nephew grow up without a father." She took one step closer. "So thank that baby. Because if Julian hadn't been pregnant." Her voice dropped into a whisper. "I would have made sure you lost far more than a business deal." Without waiting for a response, she turned away, opened the car door, and helped Julian inside. I stood there helplessly, watching the car disappear down the road, knowing the only person I had ever truly loved was slipping farther away from me with every passing second. The days that followed were nothing more than a blur. I stopped going to Sterling Group. The board insisted they could manage without me, and for the first time in my life, I didn't argue. Nothing mattered anymore. Not the company. Not the contract. Not the billions we had just earned. The only thing I could think about was Julian. I couldn't eat. Every meal placed in front of me remained untouched until it grew cold. The dining table that had once hosted important business dinners became a painful reminder that I was always eating alone. Claire, who had worked for my family since I was a child, refused to give up. Every morning, she prepared breakfast herself. Every afternoon, she quietly brought lunch into my study. Every evening, she stood outside my bedroom with another tray, hoping that this time would be different. Every single time, I sent it back untouched. One evening, she couldn't hold back her tears anymore. "Young master." Her voice trembled as she looked at me. She had always been the first person to praise me. Even when I made small mistakes growing up, she somehow found something good to say. She believed in me more than I deserved. Yet now, she simply looked heartbroken. "You've become so thin." Her eyes filled with tears. "The suit that fit you just last week is hanging off your shoulders." She slowly reached out, gently touching my arm. "I've watched you grow up. I've never seen you like this. If you keep refusing to eat, you're going to make yourself sick." I lowered my head. "I don't deserve to eat." She immediately shook her head. "No. You deserve to live with your mistakes. But you don't deserve to destroy yourself." She wiped away her tears before quietly leaving the room. Even after she was gone, the food remained untouched. The next afternoon, my mother came to see me. She didn't scold me. She didn't raise her voice. She simply sat across from me in silence for several minutes. When she finally spoke, her words were calm. "So, is this how you're planning to apologize to Julian?" I looked at her without saying anything. "By starving yourself? You think hurting yourself will somehow erase what happened?" My silence answered her. She sighed softly. Julian is carrying your child. Our grandchild. She leaned forward. That baby needs a healthy father. And Julian. He needs actions. Not punishment. I closed my eyes. He'll never forgive me. Maybe not today. She nodded. Maybe not tomorrow either. But if your regret is genuine, if your apology truly comes from your heart, then don't spend your days hiding in this house. She gently held my hand. I've known the Blackwoods for decades. They're proud people. But they're also kind. Their hearts are much softer than they pretend. If they truly believe you've changed, they'll eventually see it. Until then, keep proving yourself. Every single day. Those words gave me something I hadn't felt since the hospital. Hope. The following morning, I drove to Blackwood Mansion. The guards informed the family that I was outside. I waited. The entire day. Julian never came out. I returned the next morning. Again. I waited until sunset. Again. I never saw him. On the third day, the front door finally opened. Julian stepped outside into the garden. The moment I saw him, my heart broke all over again. He looked so much smaller than I remembered. His face had lost its color. His once bright smile was gone. Even the way he walked seemed slower. Careful. As though carrying a weight far heavier than anyone could see. Julian. My voice shook. He stopped. But he didn't turn around. I slowly walked closer, stopping several steps away. I've returned the project. I've resigned as lead negotiator. I'll give up everything else too if that's what it takes. My company, my position, my reputation, they don't matter anymore. My eyes filled with tears. The only things that matter are you and our baby. Silence. I'm sorry. The words came out again and again. I'm so sorry. I betrayed your trust. I have no excuse. But my love for you, it was never a lie. Not once. Julian finally turned toward me. His beautiful eyes, once filled with warmth whenever they looked at me, now held nothing but pain. You didn't just betray me. His voice was quiet. You made me question every happy memory we ever had. I felt my chest tighten. I trusted you with everything. I told you things because I believed you were the one person who would never use them against me. A tear rolled down his cheek. And you did. He rested a protective hand over his stomach. I'll never stop you from being part of this baby's life. Our child deserves to know their father. But me? He slowly shook his head. You lost me the day you chose business over us. My legs gave out beneath me. I fell to my knees. I'm sorry. I know words aren't enough. But please, don't give up on us. I love you. I've always loved you. Julian smiled. Not the warm smile that had once made my entire day brighter. This one was filled only with sadness. You don't have to worry. His voice barely rose above a whisper. You still have what you wanted. I frowned. He gently looked down at his stomach. Our child. I'm sure one day you'll be able to use them too. Maybe they'll unknowingly tell you confidential information just like I did. Every word felt like a knife twisting deeper into my heart. No. I shook my head desperately. Don't say that. My love was real. I swear it. It always has been. Julian simply closed his eyes. I don't believe you anymore. The bodyguards quietly stepped between us. One of them gently guided Julian back toward the house. I didn't resist. I didn't call out again. I simply remained where I was. On my knees, watching the door slowly close. Only then did I realize something. The hardest part wasn't losing Julian. It was knowing that I had become someone the love of my life could no longer believe. Julian kept the one promise he had made to me. He never used our child to punish me. A day before every prenatal appointment, one of the Blackwood family's bodyguards would call. Mr. Sterling, he would say in his usual professional tone, Mr. Julian Blackwood's appointment is tomorrow at 10 o'clock. That was all. No unnecessary conversation. No warmth. Just the date, the time, and the location. Those appointments became the only moments I was allowed to be a part of my child's life. The only moments I was allowed to see Julian. Every visit followed the same routine. I would arrive early. Julian would arrive a few minutes later with a Blackwood bodyguard. We would sit in the same waiting room, separated by only a few chairs, yet it felt as though an entire lifetime stood between us. When the doctor called us inside, Julian listened carefully to every instruction. He answered every question. He asked about the baby's health. He thanked the doctor politely before leaving. Not once did he look at me. Sometimes I caught myself staring at him for the entire appointment, hoping he would accidentally meet my eyes. He never did. It was as though I had become invisible. After every appointment, he would quietly stand, thank the doctor, and walk away. Without a goodbye. Without a glance. Without even acknowledging that I was standing only a few steps behind him. Every single visit ended the same way. And every single visit broke me a little more. Then came the 8-week appointment. The doctor smiled as he moved the ultrasound probe across Julian's stomach. So, I think both of you are going to be very busy. I frowned. What do you mean? The doctor turned the monitor toward us. There are 2 heartbeats. He smiled warmly. Congratulations. You're expecting twins. For a second, I simply stared at the screen. 2 tiny heartbeats. 2 little lives. Mine and Julian's. My eyes instantly filled with tears. A laugh escaped my lips before I could stop it. We're having twins. I turned toward Julian. Without thinking, I wrapped my arms around him. For one terrifying moment, I thought he would push me away. He didn't. He remained completely still. His body was tense. Reserved. He neither returned the embrace nor tried to escape it. That alone felt like more kindness than I deserved. Realizing what I had done, I quickly stepped back. I'm sorry. I whispered. I couldn't help myself. Julian lowered his eyes but said nothing. The silence hurt. Yet somehow, it still felt better than being completely ignored. After leaving the examination room, Julian sat quietly in one of the chairs outside while the bodyguard went to bring the car around. Instead of sitting beside him, I slowly lowered myself onto the floor in front of him. On my own knees, keeping a respectful distance from him. Then I looked up. I love you. My voice was barely audible. I love our babies. A tear slipped down my cheek. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I don't deserve another chance. But I'll spend the rest of my life proving that my love was real. I'll become the father our children deserve. And even if you never forgive me, I'll keep loving you anyway. Julian never interrupted me. He never comforted me. He simply sat there quietly until the bodyguard returned. Then he stood, walked past me, and left without saying a single word. As the weeks passed, something slowly changed. I continued visiting Blackwood Mansion almost every day. At first, I was made to wait outside the gates. Rain, sun, it didn't matter. I waited. Eventually, the Blackwoods stopped making me stand outside. One afternoon, a member of the household staff quietly opened the front door. Mr. Sterling, you may wait inside. From that day on, I was allowed to sit in the living room. It wasn't forgiveness. Far from it. But it was more than I deserved. The house staff treated me with quiet kindness. They brought me tea. They insisted I eat something before leaving. Claire had apparently spoken to the Blackwood staff, because they all knew I had barely been eating. Whenever lunch was served, someone would gently place a plate in front of me. You should eat, Mr. Sterling. For the baby's sake. Most days, I forced myself to finish at least a few bites. Not because I was hungry, but because my mother had been right. If I truly wanted to earn forgiveness, destroying myself wasn't the answer. I needed to stay alive. I needed to become someone my children could depend on. Sometimes, Julian would walk through the living room. Our eyes would almost meet. Then he would quietly look away and continue walking as though I weren't there. No greeting. No anger. No conversation. Nothing. His indifference hurt more than his anger ever had. Because anger meant he still cared. Indifference made me wonder if I had already become a stranger. Even so, the next morning, I came back. And the morning after that. And the one after that. Because no matter how long it took, even if it took years, I would keep showing up. Not to force forgiveness. Not to ask for another chance. But to prove, day after day, that my love for Julian, and for our twins, had never been a lie. And now, I was still sitting in the Blackwood family's living room. Just like every other day for the past several weeks. The familiar cup of tea rested untouched on the table before me while one of the house staff quietly asked if I wanted something to eat. I politely declined. They no longer questioned why I came every single day. At first, they had made me wait outside the mansion gates. Then, after days turned into weeks, they allowed me to wait inside the living room instead. They even treated me like a guest. They offered me tea, meals, a place to sit. Yet the one person I came to see never spoke to me. Sometimes Julian would walk through the living room on his way to the garden. Sometimes he would pass by with Viviana or one of the staff members. Every single time, he would quietly walk past me as though I wasn't even there. Not once did he greet me. Not once did he ask how I was doing. Not once did our eyes meet for longer than a second. And somehow, that silence hurt far more than any angry words ever could. But today wasn't like every other day. Today was special. Today was Julian's 23rd birthday. The small gift box resting carefully on my lap had taken me almost 2 weeks to choose. It wasn't expensive. Julian had never cared about expensive things. It was simply something I hoped would make him smile. Even if only for a second. I sat there for nearly 2 hours. Every sound coming from upstairs made my heart race. Every footstep made me look toward the staircase. But Julian never came. I smiled bitterly to myself. Maybe he didn't even want to celebrate his birthday this year. Maybe I had ruined birthdays for him too. Just as I was about to stand and quietly leave the gift behind, I heard footsteps. I immediately looked toward the staircase. Julian slowly descended, one hand instinctively resting beneath his now noticeable 17-week pregnant belly. Beside him walked Viviana. And just behind them was her wife. The moment my eyes landed on Julian, everything else disappeared. He looked beautiful. More beautiful than I had ever seen him. Pregnancy had softened his features, and despite the sadness that still lingered in his eyes, he looked absolutely radiant. Before I even realized what I was doing, I was already walking toward him. "Happy birthday?" My voice was barely a whisper. I stopped in front of him, searching his face for any sign that he wanted me to stay back. Julian remained silent. He simply looked at me. Carefully, I stepped closer. Then gently wrapped my arms around him, making sure not to place the slightest bit of pressure against his growing belly. For several long seconds, neither of us moved. Julian didn't hug me back. But he didn't push me away either. I closed my eyes. A single tear rolled down my cheek. "Happy birthday, baby," I whispered. "I hope, someday, you'll have birthdays filled with happiness again." Slowly, I stepped back before picking up the small gift box. "I bought this for you. I know I don't deserve to give you anything anymore. But I still wanted to." Julian quietly accepted the gift without opening it. Before either of us could say another word, Viviana stepped between us. "I don't think you've earned the right to give my brother birthday presents." Her voice was calm. Almost frighteningly calm. "You betrayed him. You betrayed his trust. My innocent little brother loved you with everything he had." She glanced toward Julian's belly. "And now he's carrying your twins because you intentionally trapped him." I lowered my eyes. For a moment, the old Matteo Sterling, the man who would argue with anyone who questioned him, would have fought back. Not anymore. I had long since lost the strength to defend myself. Or perhaps, I no longer believed I deserved to. Instead, I quietly looked at Julian. Tears blurred my vision. "I never trapped you." My voice shook. "I swear on our babies. I never planned any of this. I never wanted our children to be born because of guilt. I wanted them to be born into a family filled with love. My love for you, it was never fake. It never will be." Julian remained silent. His fingers tightened slightly around the gift box. Then, after what felt like forever, he finally spoke. "Matteo." His quiet voice immediately stole every bit of my attention. "Come with me." He turned toward Viviana. "I'd like to speak with him alone." The entire living room fell silent. She frowned. "Alone?" For a moment, she hesitated. Then she nodded. "I'll be downstairs." Julian slowly turned toward the staircase. I followed him to the room that had once felt like my second home. As soon as the door closed behind us, Julian walked to the wardrobe. He knelt down with visible effort before pulling out a large storage box. He placed it carefully on the bed. Then opened it. I felt my knees weaken. Inside were every gift I had ever given him. The watch from our first anniversary. The sweater we had bought together during our first winter trip. The photographs from the lake house. The tiny souvenirs from our secret dates. Every memory. Every promise. Every piece of us. "I can't keep these anymore." His voice trembled. "They remind me of a happiness I can't go back to." I shook my head. "Julian." He gently pushed the box toward me. "Please. Take them." I looked from the box to him. "We're mates. We're going to have twins. Our children deserve both of us." Julian walked over until we stood only a step apart. Slowly, he raised his hands and gently cupped my face. His touch was as warm as I remembered. A tear rolled down my cheek. "I loved you more than I ever thought it was possible to love someone." His own tears fell freely now. "And maybe, I always will." A painful smile appeared on his lips. "But every time I look at you, I remember the moment I realized the person I trusted most had chosen business over me." He swallowed hard. "I know your love wasn't fake. I believe that. I truly do. But what happened? I can't forgive it." He leaned forward. Very softly, he kissed my forehead. A goodbye filled with love. And grief. "You need to stop coming here." His voice barely rose above a whisper. Seeing you every day doesn't help me heal. It only reminds me of everything we've lost. You'll always be the father of our children. I will never take that away from you. They deserve to know you. But I need you to let me go. I couldn't stop the tears. I don't just need our children. I need you. I'll spend the rest of my life making this right. I'll listen to everything you ask of me. I'll change. I'll wait. I'll do anything. Just, my voice cracked. Don't ask me to stop loving you. Julian closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they were filled with tears. I'm not asking you to stop loving me. He whispered. I'm asking you to let me learn how to live with loving you. Silence settled between us. Neither of us moved. Neither of us spoke. Two mates who still loved each other. Standing only inches apart. Separated not by distance, but by a wound that love alone could no longer heal. I don't remember how I walked out of Blackwood Mansion that day. Everything around me had become a blur. The voices of the house staff. The sound of the front door closing behind me. Even the drive back to my estate. I remembered none of it. It was as though my body had returned home, while my soul had remained behind in Julian's room. The moment I stepped inside my bedroom, my legs gave out beneath me. I collapsed onto the floor. The box Julian had returned. Every gift I had ever given him. Slipped from my hands and scattered across the wooden floor. The music box. The photographs. The letters. The little souvenirs from our secret dates. The promises we had once made to each other. Everything we had built together, had been returned to me. I picked up the framed photograph from our first trip together. Julian was smiling at me in it. The same smile that had once convinced me I could spend the rest of my life beside him. A broken laugh escaped my lips. Then, for the first time since all of this began, I cried. Not the quiet tears I had hidden from everyone. Not the silent sobs outside his hospital room. I broke. I cried harder than I ever had in my entire life. I screamed until my throat burned. I begged a room that could no longer answer me. I apologized over and over again, even though the only person who deserved to hear those words wasn't there. Hours passed. Night fell. Still, I remained sitting on the floor surrounded by memories of the man I loved. Only then did the truth finally sink in. There wasn't going to be another chance. Julian hadn't rejected me out of anger. He had let me go because he could no longer bear the pain I had caused him. He still loved me. I knew he did. But sometimes, love wasn't enough to heal betrayal. I had lost him. Not to another alpha. Not to fate. Not to death. I had lost him. To my own greed. To a business deal I couldn't even remember the last time I thought about. The contract that had once meant everything to me had become completely meaningless. It had cost me the one person who had made my world feel like home. For the first time since presenting as an alpha, I truly understood what it meant to be alone. I was still an alpha. But I was an alpha without his mate. Without the warmth of his scent filling our home. Without his laughter echoing through the halls. Without the future we had once dreamed of together. The bond between us still existed. But it was no longer a place of comfort. It had become a reminder of everything I had thrown away. That night, I made myself a promise. I would honor Julian's decision. If staying away was what he needed to heal, then I would stay away. I would stop asking him to forgive me. I would stop trying to force my way back into the life I had broken. Instead, I would become someone our sons could be proud to call their father. I would be there for every doctor's appointment he allowed me to attend. For every heartbeat. Every milestone. Every first step. Every birthday. Every scraped knee. Every victory. Even if I had to stand in the background. I would always be there. Because loving Julian had taught me something I should have understood from the very beginning. Love was never about taking. It was about protecting. Even if that protection meant letting go. As for Julian, he would forever remain the greatest love of my life. The mate I had been blessed to find. And foolish enough to lose. Some mistakes could never be undone. Some wounds never truly healed. And some love stories were destined to leave behind nothing but regret, memories, and two little heartbeats that would forever connect us, even after we stopped belonging to each other.